I'm Emma, 28, and I've spent the last 6 years of my life working as a physical therapist in Seattle. Every day I help people rebuild their lives, piece by piece, after accidents or surgeries. I've learned that healing isn't just about the body, it's about restoring hope, teaching patience, and empowering people to regain their independence. My work isn't easy, but it's rewarding in a way I never imagined. I've always been the kind of person who runs toward the challenge, whether it was rushing to help a patient or stepping in when a colleague needed support. I was always ready to face what seemed impossible. Every day I see the strength in my patients, and in turn, I find my own strength growing. Then there's Ben, a 32-year-old neuropsychologist at the same clinic. He's calm in ways I didn't think were possible in a world that constantly moves, shifts, and demands. His eyes have seen so many different parts of the human experience: joy, pain, confusion, and growth. Ben doesn't just listen to what people say. He listens to what they don't say. That's the kind of professional he is, and honestly, it's what makes him stand out in our field. Our paths first crossed when Ben and I had to collaborate on a case. A patient had suffered a traumatic brain injury, and the road to recovery was going to be long. I was focused on her physical rehabilitation, and Ben was supporting her mental recovery. I admired his ability to speak with such patience, to help the patient feel heard. Watching him work, I began to realize that this quiet, introspective man held a unique kind of power. He could make you believe in your own recovery, even when everything felt like it was falling apart. Gradually, our interactions grew into something more than just professional respect. During late shifts, we'd grab coffee together, and for the first time, I found someone who could talk about the complexities of life with the same depth that I applied to my work. We spoke about resilience, about the human spirit, about how the lines between the professional and personal were often blurred for us. Ben's perspective on life was calming, and I realized I was beginning to look forward to our conversations, to seeing him. One evening, after a long, grueling day of working with patients and discussing the intricacies of recovery with Ben, we found ourselves in the park. It was quiet, and the city lights glimmered in the distance. Without saying much, I knew something had shifted between us. It wasn't just the work anymore. It was the shared understanding of what it took to help others, and the quiet ways we had come to care for one another. From then on, we started meeting more often outside of work, finding small moments to be together. Sometimes, it was after a difficult patient session, and we'd just sit in silence. Other times, we'd go for long walks through the city or have dinner at a local restaurant. Slowly, the lines between colleague and something more began to fade. At first, we kept our budding relationship under wraps. In our line of work, the ethics of professional boundaries were clear, and we didn't want to risk complicating things. But as time passed, it became harder to ignore the connection we had. I found myself thinking about Ben, not just as my colleague, but as someone who could see into my soul, someone whose calmness and wisdom balanced out the rush and chaos of my everyday life. Eventually, we decided to be open about it. We spoke to our supervisor, explaining that while we had developed a personal relationship, our commitment to our patients and our professional roles wouldn't change. The conversation was nerve-wracking, but it was also a turning point for us. It felt like we were no longer hiding something that was growing, and the freedom that came with that openness only deepened our connection. As months passed, our bond continued to strengthen. We'd meet after work, sometimes for quiet evenings in, sometimes to explore the city. Together, we faced life's challenges, not just professionally, but personally. When I decided to go back to school for an advanced degree in physical therapy, Ben supported me every step of the way. He would quiz me on anatomy over dinner, pushing me to be better, just as I pushed him to see the world beyond the confines of his carefully constructed thoughts. The real test came when Ben received an offer to join a prestigious neuropsychology institute in New York City. It was a career-changing move for him, one that would take him away from Seattle. The prospect of change was daunting, but after talking it through, we decided to take the leap together. It was scary, but also exhilarating. We packed up and moved across the country, unsure of what our future in New York would look like, but knowing that we were about to face it together. In New York, I continued my studies while working part-time at a local clinic. Ben's new position meant he was traveling frequently for work, but we found ways to make it work. We explored the city on weekends, finding moments of peace amid the rush. There were days when it felt overwhelming, when the adjustment to a new city, new routines, and new pressures felt like too much. But we learned to carve out time for each other. Coffee in the mornings, long walks in the evenings, and quiet nights in with nothing but the hum of the city outside. Then one evening, after a particularly long week, Ben took me to a rooftop overlooking the skyline. The stars were hidden by the city lights, but the view was still breathtaking. And there, under the hum of the city, he asked me to marry him. It wasn't a grand gesture, just a quiet promise to continue facing life's challenges together, in work and in love. With that, yes, we began to plan our future together, our wedding, and our life in this bustling new city. We built a life together, both professionally and personally, working side by side and supporting each other's dreams. Ben's career flourished, and I began to take on more responsibility in my clinic. We made New York our home, finding joy in the small things, the rhythm of the city, the moments of peace between the chaos. As time passed, we decided to expand our family. The idea of parenthood seemed daunting given the demands of our careers, but we knew we could handle it together. The journey to becoming parents was a delicate balance of work, love, and patience. When our son Jack was born, we knew our lives would never be the same. But it didn't matter, because we had each other. Raising Jack in New York wasn't easy. The city was loud, fast, and never stopped. But we made it work. Ben and I divided our time, and together, we navigated the challenges of balancing family life with our demanding careers. Jack became our little helper, spending time at my clinic or Ben's office, growing up surrounded by the very things that had brought us together. Eventually, we opened our own clinic, a place where we could offer holistic care, combining physical therapy with psychological support. It became more than just a job for us. It was our way of giving back to the community that had given us so much. And through it all, Ben and I remained partners. Partners in healing. Partners in life. As Jack grew older, we found new ways to involve him in our work, teaching him the value of compassion, patience, and the power of resilience. Our journey together had been filled with challenges, but we had faced every moment with love and determination. And as we continued to grow our clinic, we looked ahead to the future, not just as colleagues or spouses, but as a family, bound together by the same shared passion for healing and helping others. As we settled deeper into our new life, a few unexpected twists began to shape our future in ways we hadn't anticipated. A year after opening our clinic, Ben received a call about an opportunity he couldn't pass up. A renowned neuropsychologist had retired, and they were looking for someone to take over their research project on brain recovery and rehabilitation. It was a dream job for him, and yet it meant relocating, again. But this time, it was not just for Ben's career. It was for us, for our family's future. We talked about it long into the night, weighing the pros and cons, trying to figure out if this was a step forward or if it would disrupt everything we had worked for. As we always did, we talked it through. Ben assured me that the research would open up new doors for us to help our patients on a deeper level, while still maintaining our clinic as a community-centered practice. The decision was made. We would move again, this time to a smaller town in the northeast, where the research center was based. It was bittersweet, leaving the city we had learned to call home. The transition wasn't easy. New town, new surroundings, and a new pace of life. But the moment we arrived, Ben's enthusiasm about his work reignited a spark in me. He was excited by the possibilities, and I couldn't help but follow his lead. We took our time settling into the quieter rhythm of the town, spending weekends hiking, exploring local coffee shops, and finding spots where we could breathe a little easier. Though it was tough at first, we learned to embrace this slower pace. I found a new clinic in the area, and Ben began his research project, working alongside a team of researchers who shared his vision. The more we talked about it, the more I realized that this was just another chapter in our story, and with it came new challenges. Our clinic, though still small, had a loyal following. I spent time commuting between the clinic and my new job, learning how to juggle both while still keeping my family life intact. Then, something unexpected happened. Jack began to show a deep interest in the clinic. At just 6, he was fascinated by the human body, watching me work with patients, asking questions about their conditions, and even learning basic anatomy from the books we kept at home. It was a joy to see him become curious about the very things that had shaped our lives. We weren't pushing him, but it was clear that Jack had inherited the same passion for helping others that Ben and I shared. We found ourselves having small family discussions about how Jack could get involved, perhaps even following in our footsteps one day. It was one of those moments that made us realize just how far we had come, not only as professionals, but as parents, ready to pass down what we had learned. Years passed, and life continued to surprise us. The clinic grew, and with it, our responsibilities. We began offering workshops on brain injury recovery and physical rehabilitation, bringing our research insights into real-world practice. Jack, now a teenager, started volunteering at the clinic, greeting patients and learning the ropes. It wasn't just a job for us anymore. It had become a legacy, a place where people felt welcomed, heard, and cared for. Ben and I found joy in seeing our work grow, but even more in watching Jack develop into someone who not only cared about science, but about people. But nothing could have prepared us for the day that would change everything. One summer evening, as we sat down for dinner, Ben received a phone call. It was from his research team. A groundbreaking discovery in neuropsychology had been made, and they wanted Ben to be the lead author of the paper. The catch? He'd have to travel to Europe for a year to collaborate with scientists there. The offer was enormous, one that could set him on a trajectory of global recognition in his field, but it would mean leaving us for a year. We talked about it endlessly. There was no easy answer. Ben was torn. He didn't want to leave us, but he also knew that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And as much as it pained us, we realized that Ben's career had always been a journey that we had taken together. This was just another step in that journey. We agreed. Ben would go, and we would manage, just as we had always done. That year, we embraced our independence. It wasn't always easy, especially with Ben on the other side of the world, but we made it work. Our clinic thrived under my leadership, and Ben kept in touch regularly, sending updates about his work, and most importantly, sharing his excitement and dreams with us. Through it all, Jack and I learned to balance life without Ben, keeping the spirit of our family alive in our small-town world. By the time Ben returned, the clinic had expanded into 2 new locations. He came home to a flourishing practice and a life that had continued to grow in his absence. We had made it work. His research paper was published in several prestigious journals, and his name was now known internationally. But it didn't matter as much as it had before. What mattered was the time we had together now, time to reflect on all we had achieved, both individually and as a family. Looking back, we realized that this journey had never been about the destination. It had been about the people we met, the lives we changed, and the constant evolution of who we were becoming. And as we all sat together, a little older and a lot wiser, we knew that our journey was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. As we settled into this new chapter, we couldn't help but reflect on the many twists our journey had taken. Ben's return marked a turning point, and we were all eager to embrace the next steps together. Our life in this small town had grown more fulfilling with every passing day. Ben's research had opened doors to new partnerships and opportunities that had ripple effects in our community. People from all walks of life began to come to us for help, from chronic pain patients seeking rehabilitation to those dealing with neurological issues. Our clinic had become a place where people didn't just seek medical care, but a sense of hope. But as life often does, it threw us another curveball. A few months after Ben's return, I received a call from a medical conference committee asking me to speak at their upcoming event in California. They had heard of our clinic's success and the work we had done with combining community care and cutting-edge medical research, and they wanted me to share our story. At first I was hesitant. Public speaking wasn't my strong suit, and the thought of being away from home again filled me with uncertainty. But Ben encouraged me, as he always did. He reminded me that this was another opportunity to grow, to bring our story to a wider audience, and to inspire others. I agreed. The conference was eye-opening. I met incredible professionals who shared our values and learned about innovative medical approaches I had never even considered. I was especially struck by a program in California that combined mental health services with physical rehabilitation, a concept I was eager to bring back to our clinic. While I was there, I took time to explore the city. I found myself reflecting on how far we had come since our early days. I missed Ben and Jack, but I realized I was part of something much larger now. The clinic had grown from a small practice into something that could make a real impact not just on individuals, but on entire communities. When I returned, Ben was already brainstorming ways to incorporate mental health services into our clinic. It was clear to me that our professional lives were more intertwined than ever before. Our family's journey had always been about more than just balancing work and home life. It had become about creating something lasting. At the same time, Jack had grown into a young man who was no longer just a volunteer at the clinic. He had started college, studying biomedical sciences, with a growing interest in pursuing a career in healthcare. He often came home after class, his eyes wide with excitement, sharing the new things he had learned, and asking me questions that made me see medicine through fresh eyes. Ben and I were proud of the man he was becoming, but we also realized how quickly time passed. Jack was already beginning to carve out his own path, and we knew that our journey was shifting once again. That's when I started considering what the next phase of our clinic would look like. We had already made a difference in our small community, but I wanted to reach more people. The idea of expanding into telemedicine had always intrigued me. With the advancements in technology and the growing need for accessible healthcare, it seemed like a natural progression. Ben, though initially skeptical, came around when he realized the potential to provide our services to rural areas and underserved populations. We began researching telemedicine platforms and consulted with experts to ensure we could maintain the same level of care we had always offered. With Jack's help, he was already adept at the latest technologies. We launched an online portal that allowed patients to access our services remotely. It wasn't without challenges, but slowly, we started seeing the positive impact it had. We could now offer mental health support, rehabilitation services, and preventive care to individuals who otherwise might not have access to it. Through it all, we never lost sight of the personal connection that had been the foundation of our practice. We were still a family, and no matter how big the clinic grew or how far we expanded, we always made time for each other. Jack would often come to us after a long day of studying, excitedly sharing his ideas for the future, while Ben and I would debrief about our latest patients, discussing how we could make their care even more effective. The balance wasn't always easy, but we had learned that life wasn't about perfection. It was about making choices that aligned with our values, staying committed to one another, and continuing to grow as both professionals and as a family. Then came another surprise. A couple of years after we launched the telemedicine program, a major healthcare provider reached out to us. They had been following our clinic's success and the impact we had made, and they offered to partner with us to expand our model nationwide. It was a huge offer, one that would open even more doors and bring our approach to healthcare to an entirely new level. Ben and I discussed it at length, and while the opportunity was tempting, we realized that the heart of what we had built was deeply rooted in our community. After months of careful consideration, we decided to stay true to our roots. Instead of partnering with a larger corporation, we chose to continue expanding independently, staying closely connected to our patients and community. The decision wasn't easy, but it was the right one for us. We knew that our journey had always been about finding balance and making decisions that aligned with who we were and what we stood for. As Jack approached his final year of college, the question of his future began to take center stage. He had grown into a young man of remarkable intelligence, empathy, and drive. Ben and I often wondered where his path would lead. Jack had been deeply involved in the clinic for years, helping us with research, patient care, and even some of the business operations. It was clear that he had the same passion for healthcare that we did. We didn't want to push him, but we couldn't help but wonder if he would continue the legacy we had started or choose his own path. Whatever decision he made, we knew we would support him. As we approached another milestone, our 20th anniversary as a family, and 15 years since we opened our clinic, we found ourselves again reflecting on everything we had accomplished. We had been through so many changes, yet our core values had remained the same. We had always believed in the power of family, the importance of personal connection, and the need for healing not just the body, but the mind and spirit as well. We had no idea what the future held, but we knew one thing for certain. Together, we were ready for whatever came next. We had already built something special, and no matter where our individual paths took us, we would always be a family, bound by our shared journey. As we moved into the next stage of our lives, we were more focused than ever on the foundation we had built. Our clinic, which had been the heartbeat of our community, was thriving. Ben and I had found a comfortable rhythm, balancing our professional lives with our family. Yet even as things seemed to settle, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more we could do. There were still people out there, far from our reach, who needed the kind of care we had built our lives around. One evening, Ben and I sat on the porch, the sun beginning to set over the small town that had become our home. The stars were just starting to peek out, and I couldn't help but ask him the question that had been brewing in my mind for months. What if we could do more? What if we could bring our model to even more people? Could we grow without losing the personal touch that has always made us special? Ben was quiet for a moment, thoughtful. It was a big question, one that had no easy answers. But then he turned to me, a spark in his eyes. What if we could bring that same level of care, but instead of just people coming to us, we go to them? The idea was simple but powerful. We would take our expertise to different communities, places where healthcare was limited, and access to quality care was a luxury. We would create mobile healthcare units, combining telemedicine with on-the-ground support to reach those who couldn't easily come to us. It was ambitious, but we had learned by now that anything was possible when we worked together. Ben reached out to some of his contacts in the medical world, and soon we were in the planning stages. We had the vision, the skills, and the passion to make it work. We started by finding the right equipment, the right team, and the right strategy. Meanwhile, Jack had made his decision. He had just completed his undergraduate studies and had been offered several internships at top medical research institutions. But instead of jumping at the opportunity to leave for a prestigious position, he surprised us all by choosing to stay. Jack had seen firsthand how much our work meant to people, and he wanted to contribute more directly to our mission. "I'm not ready to leave yet. There's so much more we can do here, and I want to be a part of it," he said. That was all we needed to hear. Jack became an integral part of our new project, helping us design the mobile units and ensuring we could maintain the level of care our patients had come to expect. He took on more responsibility than we had ever anticipated, and it was clear that his heart was in this mission just as much as ours. It took a year of planning, fundraising, and refining the logistics, but eventually, we were ready to launch our first mobile healthcare unit. We hit the road with a team of dedicated professionals and a wealth of medical equipment designed to provide top-tier care in remote areas. Our mobile units were equipped with telemedicine capabilities, offering consultations with specialists from anywhere, and we provided in-person services like physical therapy, mental health counseling, and basic healthcare needs. The response was overwhelming. We visited rural communities and underserved neighborhoods, providing care to people who had never had access to it. We were welcomed with open arms, and the gratitude in the eyes of our patients was humbling. It felt as though we were truly making a difference, helping people who had spent years without healthcare to take control of their health, to start new treatments, and to get the answers they had long been searching for. It wasn't always easy. There were logistical challenges, moments when the weight of the project seemed almost too heavy to bear. But Ben and I leaned on each other, as we always had. We learned how to navigate the difficulties and keep pushing forward. Jack, too, was invaluable. His youthful energy and innovation kept us on our toes, and together we found solutions to obstacles we never could have anticipated. One particularly moving moment came when we were in a remote mountain town. An elderly woman, who had been bedridden for years due to an untreated condition, was brought in for a consultation. Through our telemedicine system, we were able to connect her with a specialist who diagnosed her and started her on a new treatment plan right there on the spot. The look of relief on her face, knowing that help had arrived, was something I'll never forget. That moment reminded me why we were doing this, to provide the kind of care that not only heals but gives hope. But even as our mobile healthcare units expanded, we never forgot the importance of home. Our clinic was still the core of everything, and we made sure to keep it as a place where people could come for face-to-face care, for the human connection that had always been at the heart of our practice. It wasn't just about bringing healthcare to more people. It was about creating a movement of care that was both deeply personal and widely accessible. As we continued to grow, Ben and I found ourselves reflecting once again on how far we had come. When we first opened the clinic, we never could have imagined this level of impact. We had started as a small family practice, committed to healing our community. But now, we were expanding our reach beyond anything we had dreamed. And through it all, we had stayed true to our mission: to combine compassion with care, to ensure that no one had to face a health crisis alone. Jack, now fully involved in the business side of the practice, had begun looking at ways to further innovate. He had ideas for expanding our mobile units to even more communities, and he was exploring partnerships with technology companies to integrate artificial intelligence into our telemedicine platform, making it even more efficient. As he shared his plans with us, I felt an overwhelming sense of pride. The legacy we had built was becoming something much larger than just Ben and me. It was a family legacy, one that Jack was now carrying forward. But life, as always, had a way of surprising us. A few months after we launched our mobile healthcare program, we received a call from an international non-profit organization that was focused on providing healthcare to displaced communities around the world. They had heard of our work and were interested in partnering with us to expand our services globally. It was an exciting, yet overwhelming offer. It would take us to places we had never imagined, places where healthcare was scarce, where resources were limited, and where the need for compassionate care was urgent. We didn't have to think long about it. Together, we made the decision to accept the offer. It was time for our family to take this mission beyond our borders, to bring the same care and hope we had offered so many to those in the most desperate need. The next chapter of our journey was about to begin, and as we looked at each other, Ben, Jack, and I, we knew that this was just the beginning of a new and exciting chapter for our family, our clinic, and the legacy we would continue to build.